On the night I won my award, my family never came. They all left on a trip without me. But as I stepped off the stage, someone slipped a key into my hand and whispered, "Welcome home." Moments later, my phone lit up with 66 missed calls. Can you believe that for years I chased a dream, thinking if I just achieved enough, my own family would finally see me? But the night I won the biggest award of my life, they chose a beach vacation over me. And then, the universe handed me a single, mysterious key that unlocked everything I never knew I desperately needed. Asterisk, asterisk, hey everyone, I'm Audrey Thompson, 32 years old, and what I'm about to tell you, well, it's a story about finding home where you least expect it and realizing that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you're born into. Growing up in suburban Boston, our house looked like a magazine cover. Perfect colonial, manicured lawns, parents who seemed to have it all. My dad, Richard, built his accounting firm from scratch. My mom, Elizabeth, was a high-end real estate mogul. Success wasn't just encouraged, it was the price of admission for their love. But from the moment I could remember, there was this unspoken family hierarchy. My younger brother, David, always seemed to steal the spotlight, even with his C+ grades. He'd get showered with praise, while my straight A's earned a simple nod. David made junior varsity basketball, backyard barbecue. I got into a prestigious young artist program at 16. They forgot to attend my exhibition. Then there was my sister, Heather. She figured out early that conformity was the path of least resistance. She mirrored Mom's style, her mannerisms, just gliding through life by never challenging their worldview. Me? I took a different approach. Naively, I thought if I just worked harder, achieved more, they'd finally see me. Really see me. I poured my soul into graphic design, hoping each new accomplishment would be the one. High school valedictorian? They checked their watches, then rushed off to one of David's fundraising events, a service trip to Guatemala he'd abandoned halfway through because it was too intense. College graduation, summa cum laude? Mom criticized my outfit, Dad answered emails, and our celebration dinner was cut short because Heather had a minor fender bender and needed immediate emotional support. Over and over, the pattern repeated, my achievements downplayed, my siblings' minor crises magnified. Vacations scheduled over my events. My birthdays forgotten. Christmas gifts that screamed, "We have no idea who you are." 5 years out of college, I'd built a respectable career at Horizon Creative, a boutique design agency in Boston. I clawed my way up to senior creative lead through countless late nights and sacrificed weekends. My portfolio was impressive, but I craved that bigger, national recognition. Then came the breakthrough. A huge national hotel chain needed a complete luxury rebranding. For 3 months, I poured everything I had into that project, blending hand-drawn elements with cutting-edge digital techniques. When the campaign launched, it was a sensation. Industry publications buzzed. The client saw a 20% increase in bookings. This project earned me a nomination for the Apex Award, one of the most prestigious recognitions in our industry. This was my moment. The validation I'd worked my entire life for. When the nomination letter arrived, I called my parents immediately. "That's wonderful, honey," Mom said, her voice distracted. I could hear her typing in the background. "What day is the ceremony again?" "September 15th, I told her. Grand Meridian Hotel. I had 2 extra tickets. I was hoping you and Dad could come." She checked her calendar. "Yes, I think that should work. Your father has a conference, but he'll be back Thursday night. We'll make it happen." For the first time, I allowed myself to hope. I even sent formal invitations. In the weeks leading up to the ceremony, I splurged on a midnight blue gown. I practiced my acceptance speech, telling myself not to get too excited. Just having them there would be victory enough. Then, 2 days before the ceremony, I called to confirm. "Oh, Audrey," Mom sounded flustered. "I meant to call you. Something has come up." My stomach dropped. That familiar, awful feeling of disappointment spread through my chest like cold water. "What is it this time?" I asked, struggling to keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Your brother has been under so much stress with his new position. You know, he just started at that investment firm." Your father and I decided the family needs an emergency vacation. We're flying to the Bahamas tomorrow morning. The entire family. What about the ceremony? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Well, Heather's coming too, of course. David needs all our support right now. I'm sure you understand. This work promotion has been so hard on him. I gripped the phone, knuckles white. Mom, this ceremony is the biggest moment in my career so far. I told you about it months ago. There will be other ceremonies, honey. Family comes first. You know that. David really needs this break. The conversation ended with vague promises to make it up to me and assurances they'd be thinking of me. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they were choosing to miss. That night, I alternated between tears and seething anger. Finally, I resolved I would go alone. I would not let their absence diminish my achievement. The night arrived. I watched couples and families arrive together at the Grand Meridian Hotel. Women in elegant gowns, accompanied by proud spouses. Men in tuxedos, parents beaming beside them. Even my colleagues had brought loved ones. Audrey, you look stunning, called Sophia, our agency director. Her husband stood beside her, hand resting supportively on her back. Thanks, I managed, trying to project confidence. You both look great. Where's your family? Sophia asked, glancing at the table I'd reserved. They had a last-minute emergency, I lied, the words tasting bitter. Family vacation couldn't be rescheduled. Sophia frowned. On your award night? That timing sure is unfortunate. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. At our table, those empty chairs mocked me. The printed place cards with their names. I discreetly removed them, tucking them into my clutch. Throughout dinner, I maintained pleasant conversation, fighting the gnawing emptiness inside. By dessert, my appetite was gone. As the award presentations began, I applauded mechanically, checking my phone. Nothing. No messages. No acknowledgement. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the host boomed. The Apex Award for Revolutionary Design Innovation. My category. My heart pounded as they showed videos of each nominee's work. My hotel rebranding filled the massive screens, drawing appreciative murmurs. The winner of this year's Apex Award is... The host paused dramatically, opening the envelope. Audrey Thompson for the Azura Hotel Collection rebrand. The room erupted. My colleagues leapt to their feet, cheering. I rose on shaky legs, smoothing my dress as I made my way to the stage. The walk felt both endless and too brief. I'd imagined this moment so differently. Pictured seeing my parents' faces, finally witnessing their pride. Instead, the spotlight nearly blinded me. Thank you to the Apex Committee for this incredible honor, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. The speech I'd practiced mentioned my family first. But on that stage, something shifted. I want to express my deepest gratitude to my mentors at Horizon Creative, especially Sophia Winters, who gave me the freedom to take risks with this project. I went on to thank clients, collaborators, even my first design professor. I spoke about authentic expression, client needs, creative integrity. Not once did I mention my family. As I concluded, the audience rose for a standing ovation. Tears pricked at my eyes. This moment should have been witnessed by those who had known me longest. Instead, strangers applauded while those who shared my blood were sipping tropical drinks on a beach. The reception was a blur of congratulations, business cards, promises of future collaborations. I smiled, worked on autopilot, the award growing heavier in my hand. As the crowd thinned, I found myself standing alone by a window, overlooking the Boston skyline. Quite a view, is it not? A voice said beside me. I turned to see an elderly man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. Late 70s, but stood straight and tall, with keen blue eyes. He looked vaguely familiar. Yes, it's beautiful, I replied. Harold Wilson, he introduced himself, extending his hand. My breath caught. Harold Wilson, a legend in the design world. His iconic work had revolutionized commercial art and influenced generations of designers, including me. Audrey Thompson, I managed, shaking his hand. I'm such an admirer of your work, Mr. Wilson. Please call me Harold. And I am familiar with your work as well. That hotel rebranding was brilliantly executed. You deserve the apex tonight. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched. Harold gazed at me thoughtfully. You know, I watched you during your speech. Excellent content, beautifully delivered. But I couldn't help noticing you seemed to be looking for someone in the audience. I swallowed hard. My family was supposed to be here, I admitted, the words catching in my throat. They decided on a vacation instead. Harold nodded slowly. I see. They're lost. We talked for nearly half an hour. Harold asked insightful questions about my creative process, listened intently, shared remarkable stories from his own career. Never once did he offer empty platitudes about my family or suggest I shouldn't feel hurt. He simply acknowledged the reality and focused on my work. As the event staff began clearing the room, Harold reached into his pocket. I believe you might find this useful, Audrey, he said, pressing something cold into my palm. I looked down. An antique brass key, with unusual teeth and a strange, interconnected spiral symbol engraved on its head. What is this for? I asked, confused. Harold's eyes crinkled as he smiled. Welcome home. Then he handed me a business card with an address in downtown Boston. Tomorrow evening, 8 p.m. That key will open more than just a door. Before I could question him further, he was gone, moving with surprising agility. I stood clutching the key, turning it over in my hand. As I stepped outside to hail a ride, my phone buzzed in my clutch. Then again. And again. I pulled it out. 66 missed calls. Scrolling through, they were all from my family. 20 from my mother, 15 from my father, the rest split between David and Heather. What could possibly warrant such frantic communication on the night they had chosen to abandon me? Back in my apartment, I kicked off my heels, still in my gown, staring at the phone. The missed calls were followed by a dozen voicemails, numerous urgent texts. With a sense of dread, I played Mom's first voicemail. Audrey, call me immediately. David has had a severe allergic reaction. We're at the hospital. Call me back. The next, 30 minutes later, was more frantic. Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Your brother is in serious condition. They think it was something in the seafood platter. Call me back right now. Each subsequent message grew increasingly accusatory, as if my unavailability during my award ceremony was a deliberate act of cruelty. Audrey Elizabeth Thompson. I cannot believe you are ignoring us during a family emergency. What could possibly be more important than your brother's health? Call me back this instant. By the final voicemail, Mom's tone had shifted to tearful manipulation. I just don't understand how you could be so selfish at a time like this. We're all here, worried sick about David, and you can't even bother to answer your phone. I thought we raised you better than this. The text painted a similar picture. David had consumed shellfish, triggering a serious allergic reaction. He was stabilized, but kept overnight for observation. Heather's last text said the situation was under control, but still scary. I sat in stunned silence, the crystal award reflecting the lamplight beside me, Harold's antique key heavy in my palm. The irony was almost too perfect. For years, I had dropped everything for them, rushing to solve problems, provide support, while my own needs were pushed aside. And the one night, the single evening, I had asked them to be there for me, they not only chose to be elsewhere, but now expected me to abandon my moment entirely, as though it were meaningless. My thumb hovered over the call button. The pattern was so familiar. I would call back, apologize profusely for not being available during my award ceremony, book the first flight to the Bahamas, sit by David's bedside while he recovered from what was, according to the texts, no longer life-threatening. My parents would make passive-aggressive comments about my priorities. I would swallow my resentment. The cycle would continue. But something had shifted inside me tonight. Maybe it was standing on that stage alone. Maybe it was the validation from Harold Wilson, a legend acknowledging my talent. Or maybe it was simply the culmination of years of being overlooked, finally reaching a breaking point. I put down the phone without calling. Instead, I texted my sister, *, just seeing these messages now. Is David stable? Do they need me to come? *, her response came quickly. *, he's fine now. They're keeping him overnight as precaution. Mom is freaking out though, and once you hear ASAP, asterisk, I took a deep breath and called the hospital directly, asking to speak with David's physician. After identifying myself and answering verification questions, I got a direct medical update. As I suspected, while the reaction had been serious, David was now stable and in no danger. The doctor expected to discharge him by noon tomorrow. Information in hand, I made my decision. I would book a flight for tomorrow afternoon, allowing myself this one night to process my achievement. One night to honor my own milestone before rushing to the family that couldn't be bothered to witness it. I called Sophia, my mentor at the agency. Audrey, congratulations again. How does it feel the morning after your big win? She answered warmly. Actually, it's still the same night, I explained, then filled her in on the situation. Sophia listened without interrupting. What do you feel is the right thing to do here? She asked carefully. Part of me wants to drop everything and fly there immediately, I admitted. It's what I've always done. But another part feels like that would be continuing a pattern that isn't healthy for any of us. If the roles were reversed, Sophia asked gently, would your family have left an important event of theirs to come to you? We both knew the answer. You have information from the doctor that your brother is stable and recovering, she continued. You're already planning to fly out tomorrow. Taking a few hours for yourself to process your achievement does not make you selfish, Audrey. It makes you a person with healthy boundaries. After we hung up, I sat looking at Harold's key. The strange symbol seemed to glow. Welcome home, he had said. What could it possibly mean? I found myself reaching for his business card. The address was in a historic area of downtown Boston. Something about the mystery appealed to me, a distraction from the family drama unfolding across my buzzing phone. My phone buzzed again. My mother. I sent it to voicemail. Then I booked a flight to Nassau, departing at 2 p.m. tomorrow. I would go to them as I always did, but on my terms this time. Tonight belonged to me. I texted my mother the flight information along with a brief message. Asterisk, David is stable, according to his doctor. I have booked a flight for tomorrow afternoon. Congratulations on my Apex award, by the way. Asterisk, then I silenced my phone, showered, and fell into bed. The key on my nightstand caught the moonlight, its strange symbol the last thing I saw before sleep claimed me. Morning brought more missed calls and increasingly hostile messages. I confirmed my flight, packed a small suitcase, and found myself staring at the key again. Harold's invitation had been for 8 p.m. tonight, long after my flight would depart. Yet, something about it pulled at me. A mystery I suddenly felt compelled to solve before leaving. I made another impulsive decision. I changed my flight to the following morning, giving myself time to discover what Harold had meant when he pressed that key into my palm and said those words that had resonated so deeply. Welcome home. As evening approached, I stood before a weathered brick building in Boston's historic warehouse district. Nothing about its exterior suggested anything extraordinary. Yet the address matched Harold's card. I approached the heavy wooden door. No company name, just the street number. A standard modern lock sat beneath an older, clearly ornamental keyhole. I frowned, looking at the antique key in my hand. Surely not. Glancing around, I tentatively tried fitting the key into the older keyhole. To my surprise, it slid in smoothly. When I turned it, I heard a series of internal mechanisms shifting, followed by a distinct click. The door swung inward silently. My heart pounded. I stepped into a dimly lit foyer. The door closed automatically behind me, locking with a soft click. Ahead, a narrow hallway led to another door, illuminated by a single wall sconce. As I approached, I could hear faint sounds of conversation and music beyond. The second door opened into a space that took my breath away. What had appeared from outside to be an ordinary building was an enormous open-concept studio, spanning several combined warehouses. Soaring ceilings with exposed beams rose 20 feet overhead. Massive windows, strategically covered to prevent street visibility, now flooded the space with the golden light of sunset. The vast room was divided into workshop areas, each dedicated to different creative pursuits: printing presses, digital workstations, photography studios, painting spaces, sculpture areas, a small theater setup. But most striking were the people. Perhaps 30 individuals of varying ages, moving through the space, engaged in conversation or focused on projects. The atmosphere hummed with a creative energy unlike anything I had ever experienced. Audrey Thompson. You found us. Harold Wilson approached, his expression warm with approval. He wore casual clothes, jeans, and a simple button-down that still looked elegant on his tall frame. I almost didn't come, I admitted. My family situation. Yet here you are, he observed. Perhaps that says something important about what you truly need right now. Harold gestured for me to follow. As we walked, people nodded in greeting, some looking at me with open curiosity. What is this place? I asked. We call it simply the Collective, Harold explained. It has existed in various forms for nearly 70 years. We are a community of creative professionals who believe in something more meaningful than competition and isolation. He paused before a wall covered in framed artwork, photographs, and design pieces spanning different eras. I recognized the work of renowned artists and designers, including some of Harold's own iconic pieces. Everyone here was once where you are now, he continued. Talented, driven, but somehow alone in their creative journey. Missing the true belonging that makes art not just successful, but meaningful. How did you know? I asked about me. Harold smiled. I recognized the look. I had seen it in the mirror decades ago, standing on stage, receiving accolades, scanning the audience for faces that weren't there. My parents never understood my choice to pursue design. They refused to attend any industry event, believing I would eventually come to my senses. I know what it is to achieve in absence. He led me to a quieter corner where several people had gathered. They looked up, their expressions welcoming. Everyone, this is Audrey Thompson, our newest Apex winner. Harold announced. Audrey, meet some of our members. The introductions flowed naturally. Tessa Reynolds, a photographer whose work I'd admired. James Daniels, whose typography revolutionized digital interfaces. Lucia Fernandez, an architect whose sustainable designs won international recognition. Each greeted me warmly, with genuine interest rather than the networking calculation I was accustomed to. We saw your hotel rebranding, Lucia commented. The way you integrated those hand-drawn elements with the digital components was brilliantly executed. The color strategy was particularly impressive, added Kenji Yamamoto, a color theorist whose book sat on my shelf at home. That specific blue you chose as the anchor carries exactly the right psychological weight. I found myself engaged in the most stimulating creative conversation I had experienced in years. These people not only understood my work, but appreciated the nuanced decisions behind it. They asked thoughtful questions, shared relevant insights, and built upon ideas collaboratively. As the evening progressed, Harold showed me around. Each area housed remarkable resources available to all members. The digital lab contained technology I'd only read about. The reference library held rare design books. The workshop spaces included tools and equipment few individual creatives could afford. This space belongs to all of us, Harold explained. Everyone contributes what they can. Here, distinctions between commercial success and critically important but less financially rewarded work matter less than the quality of vision and generosity of spirit. We stopped before a door in a quiet corner. Harold pulled out a key similar to mine and unlocked it, revealing a modest but beautiful studio space with a large desk, comfortable chair, excellent lighting, and a wall of windows overlooking the city. This could be yours, he said simply, if you choose to join us. Mine? I echoed, stepping into the space. Every member has a personal studio within the larger collective, Harold explained. A place that is entirely your own within the community. The key you hold opens both the main entrance and this room. I turned slowly, taking in the potential of the space. I don't understand. Why me? Why now? Because you are ready, came a voice from the doorway. An older woman with silver hair and artist's hands stepped in. I'm Eleanor Green, she introduced herself. I was watching you tonight at the ceremony. You stood alone on that stage and gave one of the most genuine acceptance speeches I've heard in years. No false modesty, no family platitudes, just authentic gratitude for the craft and those who supported your growth within it. Eleanor was my mentor when I first joined, Harold explained. just as I hope to be yours, if you will allow it. This is about more than professional networking, Eleanor added. Many of us found our way here during periods of isolation from our families of origin. Harold recognized in you what many of us experienced. We had found our voice creatively, but lacked the support of a community to truly flourish as both artists and humans. As we rejoined the larger group, people shared stories of their journeys to the collective. So many echoed elements of my own experience, successful professionals whose personal lives had been sacrificed to achievement without witness, talented individuals who had everything they thought they wanted professionally, but still felt fundamentally alone. The key is symbolic, Harold explained later, as we sat with a small group, sharing wine. It represents not just access to this physical space, but entrance into a community that sees you fully, both your talent and your humanity. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly seen. Not just my work, but me, the person behind the designs, the woman with hopes and wounds and a burning vision. These strangers somehow felt more like family than the people who shared my blood. As midnight approached, I reluctantly mentioned my morning flight. Your brother's situation? Harold asked gently. I nodded. He's stable. But my family expects me to be there. And will you go? Asked Lucia. Yes, I said after a moment. But not because I'm capitulating to their demands. I'm choosing to go with clear eyes about the dynamics at play. That feels different somehow. Harold nodded approvingly. The collective will be here when you return. That key is yours now, regardless of what tomorrow brings. My phone, which I had silenced hours ago, suddenly caught my attention. More missed calls, more urgent texts. But for the first time, they didn't fill me with anxiety or guilt. Instead, I felt a strange, new clarity. Welcome home, Harold had said when he gave me the key. Only now did I truly understand what he meant. Home was not the place where I had grown up, constantly striving for recognition that never came. Home was where I was valued for exactly who I was, without condition or comparison. I left the collective that night with the key tucked safely in my pocket, a talisman of belonging that would sustain me through whatever awaited in the Bahamas. The flight to Nassau passed in a blur of anticipation and resolve. I had texted my family my arrival time, but received only curt responses with the hospital name and room number. No one offered to meet me at the airport. I took a taxi directly to Nassau General Hospital, my small suitcase in tow, Harold's key secure in my pocket where I found myself touching it periodically for reassurance. David's hospital room was easy to find, the sounds of my family's voices audible from the hallway. I paused outside the door, took a deep breath, and entered. The scene was exactly as I had imagined. David propped up in bed, looking pale but far from critical, tapping on his phone. My mother perched beside him, adjusting his pillows unnecessarily. My father standing by the window on a business call, despite hospital policies. Heather arranging flowers on the windowsill. Their reactions to my appearance were equally predictable. Finally, my mother said, her tone sharp with disapproval. Nice of you to join us, a full day after the emergency. Hi, Mom, I replied evenly. David, how are you feeling? My brother glanced up from his phone. Better. They're discharging me in an hour. Where were you yesterday? Mom tried calling you like 100 times. 66, actually, I corrected. I was at the Apex Awards ceremony. You know, the one I told you all about months ago, the one you all promised to attend before deciding on this last-minute vacation instead. My father ended his call and turned to me, a frown creasing his brow. This is hardly the time for that discussion, Audrey. Your brother could have died. But he didn't, I pointed out. And according to his doctor, he was stabilized quickly and was never in life-threatening danger after the initial treatment. How would you know what his doctor said? My mother demanded, gasping as though I'd said something scandalous. I called the hospital directly last night after I saw all the missed calls. I spoke with Dr. Mendez myself to get an accurate medical assessment. You called his doctor without consulting us first? Mom sputtered. I needed factual information to make an appropriate travel plan, I explained calmly. The doctor confirmed what I suspected, that while the reaction was serious, David was stable and recovering well. So, you decided your little design party was more important than being here for your brother? Heather chimed in, her voice dripping with judgment. Something snapped inside me. Years of accommodating their dismissive attitudes, of minimizing my own needs and achievements, of accepting the unspoken family hierarchy, it all collapsed under the weight of this newest injustice. My little design party, I repeated slowly, was the Apex Awards ceremony. The highest honor in my industry. An achievement I've worked toward for my entire career. An event I specifically asked you all to attend months ago, which you agreed to, before canceling at the last minute for an emergency vacation. David needed. My mother began, but I cut her off. David needed a break from his stressful new job. Yes, I heard that excuse already. Yet, somehow that need superseded a commitment you had made to me. And now you have the audacity to be angry that I didn't immediately abandon the most important professional recognition of my life to rush to his bedside for a medical situation that doctors had already resolved. The room fell silent. My family stared at me as though I had suddenly started speaking a foreign language. In all our years together, I had never directly challenged their treatment of me like this. I don't understand why you're being so selfish, my mother finally said. Family comes first, Audrey. We taught you that. Did you? I asked. Because from where I stand, it seems some family members come first, and others are expected to sacrifice everything without complaint. My father stepped forward, his expression stern. That is enough, Audrey. Your brother was in the hospital. Whatever award ceremony you had could have been rescheduled. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Industry awards ceremonies don't get rescheduled because one nominee has a family emergency. But that response perfectly illustrates my point. You have no idea what this award means in my field because you have never bothered to understand or value my career. We've always supported your little hobby, my mother protested. My little hobby? I echoed, incredulously. I am a senior creative director at one of the top agencies in Boston. My designs have increased client revenues by millions of dollars. And as of Friday night, I am an Apex Award winner, which puts me among the top designers in the country. But please, tell me more about my little hobby. David shifted uncomfortably. Look, Audrey, no one is saying your work isn't important. Are they not? I challenged. When have any of you attended a single one of my professional events? When have you asked meaningful questions about my projects? When have you celebrated my achievements without immediately changing the subject to something Heather or David has done? I pulled out my phone and showed them photos from the award ceremony, the elegant venue, the crystal trophy, me on stage accepting it, alone. This should have been a family moment, I said quietly. I wanted to share it with you. I saved seats for you. Instead, I stood on that stage searching an audience for faces that chose to be elsewhere. We had no choice, my mother insisted. It was an emergency. It was a choice, I corrected. Just like every other time you have chosen to prioritize David's anxieties or Heather's conveniences over my significant life events. It is a pattern that has existed my entire life, and I have finally recognized it for what it is. I showed them more photos, these from the collective. The incredible space, the warm community of creative professionals, Harold and Eleanor with their arms around my shoulders. While you were all making me feel guilty for not immediately dropping everything for a non-emergency, I found people who actually value what I contribute to the world. People who understand my work and appreciate my vision without condition. What is this place? Heather asked, peering at the photos with a frown. It's called The Collective, a community of creative professionals who support each other, both artistically and personally. They invited me to join them after seeing my work and recognizing something in me that my own family never has. My father scoffed. Sounds like some kind of cult to me. Of course, that would be your interpretation, I replied. Heaven forbid someone actually appreciate me for exactly who I am, without trying to make me feel small or insufficient. My mother stood up, her face flushed with anger. I will not sit here and listen to these accusations. We have given you everything, Audrey. We paid for that fancy art school. We supported you when you chose a career with no real security. And this is how you repay us, by attacking us during a family crisis. I took a deep breath, centering myself. I am not attacking you. I am finally speaking the truth about how I have been treated in this family. And I am setting a boundary, that my accomplishments matter too. that I matter too. Of course you matter, David said weakly. You're being dramatic. Am I? I challenged. When was the last time this family rearranged plans to accommodate something important to me? When Mom missed my college graduation for your soccer tournament. When Dad scheduled the family reunion during my first gallery showing. When you all decided that your vacation was more important than the biggest night of my career. I reached into my bag and pulled out the Apex Award I had carefully packed in my carry-on. The crystal caught the hospital fluorescent lighting, sending prisms across the white walls. This is what you missed, I said, setting it on the bedside table. This is what was not important enough for you to show up for. The award stood there, impossible to ignore, a physical manifestation of both my achievement and their absence. No one spoke for several long moments. Finally, my mother broke the silence. Well, congratulations on your award. But right now, we need to focus on getting David back to the resort. The doctor is preparing his discharge papers. And there it was. The immediate pivot away from my accomplishment, back to David's needs. So predictable, I could have scripted it. Of course, I said, picking up the award and carefully returning it to my bag. Some things never change. I walked toward the door, then paused. I will be flying back to Boston tomorrow morning. I have a new project starting and, apparently, a studio space to set up at the collective. You just got here, my mother protested. We have the resort booked for 3 more days. We were going to take family photos on the beach tomorrow. I turned back with a sad smile. I'm sure the photos will be lovely. Send me a copy, why don't you? You can put it right next to the empty frame where my awards ceremony photo should have been. With that, I walked out of the hospital room, the weight of the key in my pocket somehow balancing the heaviness in my heart. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth to my family without apology or compromise. Whether they heard me or not was beyond my control. But I had finally heard myself, and that made all the difference. I returned to Boston the next morning, having spent a single night in Nassau at a hotel separate from my family's resort. They had texted several times, a mixture of guilt trips and practical questions about when I would rejoin them. I responded only to confirm my departure and wished David continued recovery. The key to the collective felt different in my hand as I approached the unmarked door the following evening. No longer just a mysterious invitation. It now represented a conscious choice to prioritize my own growth and well-being. When the door swung open, it felt like stepping into possibility. Harold was waiting in the foyer as though he had anticipated my arrival. Welcome back, he said simply. How was Nassau? Clarifying, I replied. And brief. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Are you ready to see your studio? The room I had briefly visited before my trip had been transformed. The basic furniture remained, but now the space contained art supplies, reference books relevant to my specialty, and a high-end computer setup with design software already installed. How did you? I began, running my fingers along the ergonomic chair that seemed perfectly sized for me. We all contributed, Harold explained. Tessa mentioned you admired her lighting setup, so she had an extra installed here. James thought you might appreciate his collection of typography references. The computer came from Kenji, who recently upgraded his own system. Tears pricked at my eyes. These people barely knew me, yet they had created this space with such thoughtful intention. There's no pressure to use it immediately, Harold assured me. The studio is yours. Whether you work here daily or once a month, the collective understands that creative rhythms vary. That evening, I met more members. Each person I encountered showed genuine interest in my work and perspective. Unlike networking events where conversations were thinly veiled transactions, these interactions felt authentic and generative. Ideas were shared freely. Collaborations offered without calculation. Wisdom given without expectation of return. Over the following weeks, the collective became my sanctuary as I processed the seismic shift in my family relationships. My parents sent a letter after returning from the Bahamas, expressing their disappointment in my attitude and suggesting I take time to reflect on family priorities. I responded simply, I am reflecting deeply on priorities and boundaries. I hope you will do the same. Heather called once, ostensibly to check on me, but really to report that our parents were very hurt by my behavior. When I declined to apologize, she sighed dramatically and said, "You've always been so difficult, Audrey. Would it kill you to just go along with things for once?" Actually, I replied, "It might. At least it would kill something essential in me. I'm not willing to sacrifice that anymore." David sent a text thanking me for coming to Nassau, carefully avoiding any mention of the confrontation or my award. I responded with civility but maintained the new distance I had established. At work, my professional status was elevated by the Apex win. Sophia offered me leadership on the agency's most prestigious new accounts. My opinion was sought on strategic decisions. Junior designers asked for mentorship. But the most profound changes were happening within the collective. Harold took me under his wing, sharing insights from his decades in the industry. He introduced me to key contacts, reviewed my portfolio, and gently pushed me to explore techniques I had been hesitant to try. "You have been designing for external validation for too long," he observed one afternoon. "What would you create if you were designing solely from your authentic vision?" That question catalyzed a new approach to my work. I began experimenting with styles and methods I had previously avoided, concerned they wouldn't be commercially viable or would be dismissed by my family as impractical. Now, supported by a community that valued creative exploration, I found my authentic voice emerging stronger and more distinctive. A month after joining, I collaborated with Lucia and James on a major public installation for the City Arts Initiative. Our proposal, combining my visual sensibility with their architectural and typographic expertise, was selected from dozens of submissions. "This wouldn't have happened without the collective," I told Harold, "not just the connections, but the confidence to put forward such an unconventional concept." "The connections matter," he acknowledged, "but they are merely the conduit. What flows through that conduit, your vision, your voice, that is what makes the difference. That was always within you. The collective just helped clear away the interference that prevented you from fully accessing it." The interference he referenced was becoming clearer to me through weekly therapy sessions I had begun shortly after returning from Nassau. My therapist, Dr. Patterson, helped me recognize patterns in my family dynamic that stretched back generations. "Your father mentioned once that his sister moved across the country and rarely visits," I told Dr. Patterson. "He always described her as the difficult one who abandoned the family. I'm beginning to wonder if her story might echo mine." This insight led me to reach out to my Aunt Valerie, my father's sister, who had settled in California decades ago. Our phone conversation proved revelatory. "Your grandfather was the same way with your father and me," she explained. "Nothing I did was ever quite good enough, while your dad, the son, could do no wrong." When I finally established boundaries in my 30s, I was labeled the family troublemaker. "That sounds familiar," I said. "It's a pattern that goes back at least 3 generations in our family," Aunt Valerie continued. "I have photos of your great-grandmother with her children. The sons are always centered, the daughters peripheral. The dynamic was baked into the family system long before any of us were born." This conversation was healing in unexpected ways. The recognition that the pattern preceded me, that it was not about my personal failings or worth, allowed me to view the situation with greater compassion, both for myself and, eventually, for my family. After 6 weeks of minimal contact, my parents suggested a reconciliation dinner. I agreed to meet at a neutral restaurant, setting clear expectations beforehand about respectful communication. The evening was tense but civil. They made some effort to ask about my work, though their questions revealed how little they understood my field. When they suggested I attend an upcoming family gathering, I was able to decline without guilt, explaining I had a prior commitment with the collective. "This art group seems to be taking up a lot of your time," my father observed with a frown. "It's not just an art group, Dad," I replied. "It is a professional community that supports both my creative development and my personal growth." "More than your actual family?" my mother asked pointedly. I considered her questions seriously before answering. "They offer a different kind of support, one that I have needed but never found within our family dynamic. That does not diminish our connection. But it does mean I'm no longer looking to you for validation in areas where our values and understanding differ so fundamentally." They didn't like this answer, but they didn't argue further. It was progress of a sort, establishing new terms for our relationship rather than severing it completely. With my siblings, the shift was more subtle. David called occasionally. Our conversations were superficial, but less laden with the old patterns. Heather remained the most resistant to change, continuing to act as an extension of our parents' perspectives. But even she had begun asking cautious questions about my work at the collective, as though some part of her recognized the freedom I had found and wondered what it might mean for her. As months passed, my life transformed. My work at Horizon Creative evolved dramatically, incorporating the experimental approaches I'd developed at the collective. When a leading design publication featured my projects, they noted the remarkable evolution and newfound authenticity in my aesthetic. 6 months after joining the collective, I was nominated for another prestigious award, this one for the City Installation Project. The ceremony would be held at the same venue as the Apex event. "Will your family attend this one?" Harold asked gently. "I haven't invited them," I replied. "Instead, I have reserved seats for you, Eleanor, Lucia, and James. My chosen family. The people who truly see and celebrate my vision." Harold's eyes crinkled at the corners. "I would be honored." The night of the ceremony arrived, and this time I entered the Grand Meridian Hotel with a sense of peaceful certainty rather than anxious hope. The front row held no empty seats, no absent family to search for during my acceptance speech. Instead, Harold's silver hair caught the light as he turned to watch my approach. Eleanor, elegant beside him. Lucia and James engaged in animated conversation. The collective filled the chairs that had once been reserved for blood relations who couldn't recognize the value of what I had created. When my name was called as the winner, their standing ovation carried the weight of true understanding. And when I returned to my seat, award in hand, I realized the empty space inside me had finally been filled. Not with the approval I had spent decades seeking from my family, but with the self-acceptance that had bloomed in its absence. 1 year after receiving that mysterious key from Harold, I stood in my studio at the collective, surveying the space that had become more home to me than anywhere else. My work filled the walls, not just client projects, but personal pieces that expressed aspects of myself I had previously kept hidden. The morning light streamed through the tall windows, illuminating both the physical space and the internal transformation it represented. My relationship with my family had settled into a new pattern, one with clearer boundaries and more modest expectations. I maintained limited, structured contact, calling my parents twice monthly for brief conversations and joining major holiday gatherings when my schedule permitted. The dynamic remained imperfect, but removing the constant pressure for their approval had allowed genuine moments of connection to occasionally break through the old patterns. Surprisingly, it was my family who had begun to shift, albeit slowly, in response to my changed behavior. My mother had asked thoughtful questions about my latest project during our last call. My father had sent a clipping from the Boston Globe that mentioned the success of our public installation, with a brief note, "Proud of you." Small gestures, perhaps, but noticeable departures from their previous dismissiveness. Most unexpected was David's appearance at the opening of a gallery show featuring collaborative work from several collective members, including me. He arrived unannounced, awkwardly clutching a small gift bag. "This place is incredible," he said, looking around the converted warehouse space with genuine admiration. "I had no idea this was the kind of thing you did." "To be fair, you never really asked," I replied, but without the bitterness that would have colored such a statement a year earlier. We walked through the exhibition together, and for the first time in our adult lives, my brother actually listened as I explained my creative process and the meaning behind different pieces. Over coffee afterward, our conversation turned to family dynamics. "I never realized how differently Mom and Dad treated us," David admitted. "It was so normal to me that I didn't question it. But after that day in the hospital, I started paying attention." "You were right, Audrey. The pattern is obvious once you see it." "It took me 32 years to see it clearly," I said. "And another year to figure out how to respond in a way that was healthy for me." "Aunt Valerie reached out to me," he continued. "She said you two had talked. She told me about how Grandpa favored Dad, just like Dad favored me. It's weird to think this has been going on for generations. Patterns repeat until someone disrupts them, I observed. David nodded thoughtfully. I want to do better with my own kids someday, not perpetuate this. That conversation marked a turning point in our sibling relationship. While we would never be exceptionally close, we had established a new foundation based on honest recognition of the family patterns rather than blind participation in them. Heather remained the most resistant to change, still firmly entrenched in her role as the mirror of our parents' values. But even she had begun asking cautious questions about my work at the collective, as though some part of her recognized the freedom I had found and wondered what it might mean for her. As my blood family slowly adjusted to the new boundaries I had established, my role within the collective deepened. Following Harold's example, I began mentoring younger artists, particularly those struggling with family dynamics similar to what I had experienced. The key Harold had given me that fateful night now hung on a simple chain around my neck, transformed into a pendant by one of the metalsmiths in the community. I touched it often during difficult moments, a tangible reminder of the belonging I had found. The collective itself had evolved with new members and projects. Our collaborative installation had drawn national attention, leading to similar commissions in other cities. I found myself traveling frequently, representing both Horizon Creative and the collective at industry events. During one such trip, I received news that Harold had experienced a mild heart attack. I flew back immediately to find him already recovering at home, stubborn as ever, dismissing concerns about his health. I am merely reminded of my mortality, he said when I visited, which is not altogether a bad thing at my age. Makes one consider legacy. You have an incredible legacy, I assured him. The collective alone has touched hundreds of lives over the decades. He smiled, reaching for my hand. The legacy matters only if it continues to grow. You are part of that now, Audrey. When I saw you standing alone on that stage a year ago, I recognized not just someone who needed the collective, but someone the collective needed. A month later, fully recovered, Harold and I returned to the Grand Meridian Hotel, this time for me to present an award rather than receive one. Standing at the podium, looking out at the audience where Harold sat in the front row, I thought about that parallel moment a year earlier, when I had searched in vain for my family's faces. True belonging, I told the audience during my presentation speech, is not about where you came from, but where you are seen and valued for your authentic self. Sometimes we find that in unexpected places, with people who have no obligation to love us, but choose to appreciate us anyway. After the ceremony, as we walked through the hotel lobby, I noticed a young designer. Standing alone near the exit, clutching her portfolio case and blinking back tears. Something in her posture, in the determined lift of her chin despite the obvious disappointment in her eyes, resonated deeply with me. Harold noticed my attention shift and followed my gaze. She reminds me of someone, he said quietly. I nodded, reaching into my bag where I kept a small box containing several replica keys that Eleanor had gifted to senior collective members. Would you excuse me for a moment? Approaching the young woman, I introduced myself. We talked briefly about the ceremony, her nominated work, which hadn't won but showed remarkable promise, and her obvious passion for design despite limited professional support. Sometimes the recognition we seek comes from unexpected sources, I told her, pressing a key into her palm, just as Harold had done for me. I slipped her my business card with the collective's address written on the back. Tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. That key will open more than just a door. The look of confused hope on her face mirrored what I imagined my own expression had been a year earlier. As she left, clutching the key tightly, I rejoined Harold. The circle continues, he said approvingly. Home is not always where we are born, I replied. Sometimes it is where we are reborn. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat looking at the framed photo on my wall, a group picture from the collective's holiday party, Harold and Eleanor in the center, surrounded by the diverse community of creatives who had become my chosen family. My blood relatives existed in another frame nearby. Our connection maintained, but transformed. Both relationships had value, but I no longer confused one for the other, or expected either to be what it was not. The key pendant rested against my chest, warm from constant contact with my skin. It had come to symbolize not just access to a physical space or even to a community, but to my authentic self. The self I had nearly lost in the endless pursuit of approval from those constitutionally unable to provide it. The most profound lesson of the past year had been learning that belonging is not a fixed address, but a journey of connections. Some connections are given to us by birth, complex and laden with generational patterns. Others we discover along the way, chosen relationships that reflect who we are becoming, rather than merely where we came from. Both have their place in a complete life. The wisdom lies in recognizing the difference and not expecting apples from orange trees. Have you ever found family in unexpected places? Has anyone ever truly seen you when your blood relatives couldn't? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you found belonging in your own life. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that family can be both born and chosen. Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.